Hi everyone. Maybe a controversial video today. Kind of two minds whether to make it or not, but I felt like I had to make it. The more that I've sat in the day, the more I've been thinking about it, and then seen some other people starting to rise up out of the Twitter sphere, kind of saying, you know, this doesn't feel right to me, and I'm like, this doesn't feel right to me either. What am I talking about? Well, last week it was Sanderson and Wired, or 2 weeks ago, whatever it was, and book Twitter has exploded this weekend. I thought Twitter was dead, not right, around a tweet that contained an article by a guy called Jeff Sexton, who talked about receiving an ARC and not leaving a review. And I really wanted to explore some of the conversation and some of the text and subtext around this conversation, because I think it's quite nuanced. I don't think it's quite as black and white as things have been represented. And I also think we are missing the opportunity for giving people to have their own opinions and inviting conversation about this, because blanketing people under one umbrella of all reviewers or all authors or all consumers of content is not necessarily, I think, a healthy place to be in. So I thought I'd make a video, represent some of the thoughts that I have, but also being very clear, for exactly the points that I've just made, I'm not being judgmental about anybody in this kind of side of it. People are in very different reasons for doing any of this. Some of them are doing it professionally, some people just doing it as a hobby, some people doing it to have a bit of fun, some people doing it to connect with people. So there isn't a right or wrong answer, and I do not want this to be taken as being sitting in judgment about anybody in particular or in any particular view, and hopefully I'll be able to illustrate that as I move my way through the video. So what am I talking about? It's this idea that if you accept an ARC and you do not leave a review, especially a timely review, it is, well, maybe not theft in its own right in criminal form, it is ethically theft insofar as you're stealing the IP, using it, consuming it, and not actually doing what you purported or agreed to do that with. And I think this is a whole minefield, and I do feel like a lot of people on a lot of sides of the conversation really don't even want to talk about the sort of unhealthy nature of the symbiotic relationship between reviewer and author, especially those within the indie market who are really reliant on reviews in order to build a career or build a voice for the book. So where to start with this? I'll start with the article itself, because I think a lot of the reaction to the article itself has been based around the fact that there's quite inflammatory language used in the article, and to be perfectly honest, I think that was entirely the intention of the author. I mean, it seems like an article that they have posted year on year. This isn't a new article, this is one that's been repeated over years, so it's obviously an argument or a topic that has currency, you know, over a long time. And I think in order to keep on getting clicks, keep on getting views, you have to use some inflammatory language, using kind of persuasive language if you want, or emotional language. And in this case, the use of the word theft gets people's back up very, very quickly. And because of that, and because of the inflammatory nature, I don't actually want to talk about the argument that they're trying to make so much in there, as to rather the reactions or the implications that it has for the people that are involved in this sphere. And I will include myself in this and give some examples of where this has left me feeling uncomfortable, or where I've kind of found myself in this as the most minor of reviewers that is on the internet to be found anywhere. But somebody that, when they do review or get involved in this kind of sphere, does want to represent the stuff that I'm doing well, both in terms of the quality of the stuff that I produce, but also in representing the art that I'm consuming in some sort of tangible or usable form. The next way I'd like to attack this is actually talking about, I think, some of the reasons that this has become sort of taboo to talk about. I promise you I'm not taking aim at this, but I think a lot of the conversation narrative is driven around the fact of one man's experience with this. That'd be Rand Cahill's view. And Rand has got a very open and honest view about it. His relationship with this whole thing is beyond clear. He's very open about it, and always has been, and has stated his point now and again. And I think this, if nothing else, is actually the most healthy position to have, which is, if he sends out an ARC, or he sends you an ARC, or sends you an advanced copy of the book, or, you know, one that's after the fact or otherwise, true reviewer, he's inviting you to take the opportunity to review it. He would appreciate a review, obviously, but he is hoping that by spreading a wide net that he will get a couple of reviews and build notoriety and build notice of his book and his work. And for Ryan, this is obviously working very well. It's a strategy that's worked really well for him. And because it's been working really well for him, and because he's become sort of the poster boy for how to successfully market as an indie author, I think a lot of people feel that this is an established norm. And I'm not quite so sure that that's correct. Just because he's been very successful in doing it, because he's very open about doing it, does not mean that it is fair game for everybody to assume this is the relationship that is going on here. I know some others like Michael Fletcher, etc., hold similar views. So a lot of very prominent names hold this to be accepted. And that's all well and good until you're somebody that's coming into this sphere and going, well, what if I'm not totally au fait with this? What if I'm only giving out a couple of ARC reviews? I'm trying to select people, I'm trying to get people to come out, especially if I'm printing and publishing and getting them sent to people. On the Chancellor review, that's a very expensive game. Publishing books and writing books as a hobby or a changing career or anything like that is a very expensive endeavour, and it's unlikely that you're going to see any return anytime soon with that investment. So did Tower everybody with the same brochure to kind of say that because they're doing it and they're very successful, this is the norm? That's fine. If I go to the other point of the view, which is that of the reviewer, one of the things that really shocks me about being part of BookTube and being part of the reviewing game is there are no shortage of books at all to be read, either to be consumed or to be, to find your next book, or even books that are being recommended to me on the daily by people that know what kind of books that I'm going to like. So because of this, trying to decide what you are going to read next can be a bit tough, and in some cases it can be, well, maybe I need to review this book, maybe I need to prioritise other books, and because we're all sort of mood readers and different types of readers, maybe we're not always sure of what we will want to read and when we will want to read it, depending on how things go. As somebody that is in on the periphery of reviewing, but is much more interested in doing buddy reads, etc., those kind of things nearly always take precedence for me until somebody else is going to read it with me or wants to have a discussion about it. That's the reason that I'm wanting to read, by and large, and that will always kind of move my TBR around accordingly. So I'm maybe not the best test case scenario for this, but I've seen a lot of people going like, how dare you demand how I'm going to use my time, and how you shouldn't have control over me if I accept an ARC from you. And yes, but again, for the same reason, if you've stated that from the outset with the person that you've taken the ARC from, then it's very clear where everybody falls on that line. If you haven't, then this is where some of the, I wouldn't say problems come through, but some of the bad blood comes from, or some of the questions come from. I think people very, very clearly need to state what is likely to happen in the event that you accept an ARC or otherwise. And I think there's a very clear line when I've seen people discussing this about the people that are talking about requesting an ARC and the people that are being offered an ARC. And I think this is a very different side of the conversation, because those that are requesting an ARC are going out of their way to say, I want to read your book. Can I have a copy of your book? And in doing so, it is suggested, because you've went and looked for it, that you will probably do a review for that. And if that review doesn't come, that couldn't help, whether it was intention or not, but feel like theft. It basically says, you went and got a copy of this book off me, whether an e-book or physical book, to save yourself buying it. And while that may be true for some people, for others it might not have just been the case. For a lot of people, getting an ARC or an advanced reader copy is very much about timeliness. They want to read this before it hits the shelves and around that. And here's where I'll throw some of my own experiences in. I get approached very, very, very occasionally to do ARCs. I've currently got one that I'm sitting on that I'm going to do. Puts pressure on me because I don't read very much. I'm in a couple of buddy reads that are dominating a lot of my time, but I will get a review out of that for other one. I was approached for other books, but books that I'm specifically really looking forward to. I'll give you an example, and I hope he doesn't mind me mentioning the name. John Palladino's new book, Buzzard's Bowl, is coming out at the end of the month, pretty much, or at the end of next month. And it's a book that I'm really, really looking forward to. John had done it, reached out to people that had probably reviewed his book or were looking to generate interest again, and offered me an ARC. And I felt almost shame going back to John and saying, do you know, John, I really, really appreciate you offering this opportunity to me, but this is a book that I desperately want to read. This is a book that I'm really looking forward to. I liked your book so much. I bought the first book myself in 2 formats, and I really appreciate you offering me the ARC, and that you're kind of giving me recognition for reviewing your book the first time and being involved and maybe the success of some of that first book. But I want to support this in the best way I can, and that is, as a consumer, I want to see you keep on writing, so I'm going to buy your book. Now, I'm not saying that's the best way to do it or otherwise, but for me, it was the best way that I felt comfortable with the whole situation and in how I could best support the author. And I've had conversations with other authors and other people where they've offered to send me either physical or ebook versions of their books, and I've turned it down for similar reasons. So I think there's a lot of nuance in here, and a couple of things that I would suggest with people. I mean, and I would love for a couple of authors to come on and talk freely and be kind of open enough to kind of suggest, you know, I don't feel wholly comfortable with this whole process. I've seen a lot of people trying to tiptoe around this and kind of say, oh, but it's fine if you, whatever you think. I think ultimately we need to clear up the lines. I think when you accept an ARC, whether that's through, you know, somebody reaching out to you or otherwise, that it's very clear what the expectation is from the author about what they want to happen, when they want to happen, and actually you to be open and honest and to go back and say, actually, I don't think that's going to be feasible, or I think it's going to work, or, you know, otherwise, because I think it'll clear up a lot of that. I know some authors have suggested, well, I have given out ARCs in the past and they didn't come back and blah, 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 and I knew just not to engage with that person again, which I think is completely fair. I think it's completely fair, both from the reviewer side and from the author side, but that to have reached that point means that there's been a breakdown in the conversation somewhere along the ways. I think it's a really fascinating conversation, and I have to say, in the main, I'm still very much in listening mode because I feel very much in the periphery of this. I only see one side of the conversation, and I like to hear so much more about how people feel about this. Is it different for traditional? Is it different for NetGalley, where they monitor your ratio of reviews that you post, or otherwise? Is that a good way to manage it? Does it self-manage itself in that way? And I think there's a lot of conversation still to be had about all of this. Whatever your opinions on the piece, I think it's very good to have an open conversation about this within the community, for those that see the value in having, you know, encouraging both each other, those of us that love to read great books, those of us that are really good at writing great books, and those that are somewhere caught somewhere in between in the journey. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Please leave comments. I'm sure there'll be a few in to be had about it, and I'll speak to you again on the channel. Take care. All the best. Bye.